Hello, everybody. Aloha. I'm Natalie, and this is Life After a Cult, the channel where we expose cult nonsense. We laugh at the absurdities, and we hopefully unbrainwash ourselves in the process. Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. What if Scientology is just a conspiracy theory that got a celebrity following and a real estate license? Like we've got aliens, secret government plots, and something called a body Satan, which sounds like a bad Tinder date, but is apparently inside all of us if you ask Scientology. Today, I'm going to be joined by Liz Gale, fellow ex-Scientologist and author. We're diving into culty overlaps between conspiracy theories and Scientology. So grab your tinfoil hat if you need to. I have mine nearby just in case. I need to make a new one, but get ready because it's going to get weird and it's going to get weird fun. And thank you, moderators, for being here. I appreciate that. Hello to everybody in the live chat members. I appreciate you being here. There is a question in there in the chat. And if you are on the replay, please do answer this question. What's your favorite conspiracy theory? Whether you believe it or not, you don't have to believe it. You can believe it. You cannot believe it. But what is your favorite conspiracy theory? Go ahead and put that in the comments. If you're on the replay, go ahead and put that in the chat. Let's get going. Let's not waste time. Let's bring up the one, the only Liz Gale.
Hello.
Hello. I was thinking about this morning, what we were going to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's almost so much to get into. But I thought, first off, let's start off with a little bit like, what would you consider a conspiracy theory to be?
A conspiracy theory. Well, the term conspiracy theory itself is a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory is basically any set of ideas or beliefs that are against the norm that have, the term conspiracy theory has a little bit of a negative connotation, I'd say, like a little bit of a fringe science-y wacko out there. But also some things that have turned out to be true that are like secret plans of the past have come out. So I don't know what the perfect definition for a conspiracy theory is, but basically the wacky, the wild, the unbelievable, the secretive.
Yeah. The crazy thing is many of them have turned out to be true. I feel like there are two things that are true on this. There are conspiracy theories that are like, oh my gosh, that's just a far out theory. Like that's ridiculous. Right. But there are ones that are like, well, that's a far out theory, but wait a minute. I guess we're finding out now that that's actually true. And I've even seen over the years, you probably have too, where it seems like I could be, a little paranoid, but like our government sometimes makes things that wants to label it as a conspiracy theory when it's actually not. And given our background in Scientology, where we're constantly gaslit, it feels like, I don't know, I feel today that I'm way more open to almost anything. Doesn't mean I believe it, but I'm very open to talking about it. And I'm fascinated by the topic of conspiracy theories. And when I heard you were, I was like, it's my sister from another mister.
That's right. Yes, I think that once you've had the rug pulled out from under you on any kind of topic, especially if it's like a scientific or a factual based understanding, you can question reality like a little bit deeper. And with a lot of these cults, the other thing is, I don't know if you picked this up, but I was raised in Scientology, obviously generational like you. My mom worked for CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, and they fight, I guess you could say, psychiatry and the mental health field, as you know. So I was privy to a lot of these really intense conspiracy ideas from them. So like that psychiatrists started World War II and influenced Hitler. That was one. A lot of stuff about the IRS, about corruption. Not to say it's not true, but these were ideas that really pushed against the norm, pushed against the status quo. And very anti-government. I got a very anti-government feeling from all of those Scientology publications, Freedom Mag, very anti-CIA. So did you get that? I mean, did you grow up trusting the government through Scientology's eyes or what?
No, I know. I mean, between, the possibility of the psychs getting their hands on us in public schools, not so much. It was very much, I remember growing up with the idea that we keep to ourselves, which is like such a cult thing.
Right.
There's definitely that. There was some conversation I remember as a child listening to the adults, mainly my alcoholic grandpa dad, who would go on hours and hours of rants, but sometimes throw in some of these theories. I want to make sure to share. I'm going to pull up your channel quick. I know y'all know, but head over to Liz Gale. We just shared it in the chat. If you're not already following Liz Gale, you're going to want to, because you will be missing out. You will have complete and utter FOMO.
I should have you share my other channel next time, my Scientology channel, because I bet that's what most people want to see. I've been shifting my personal channel over to
Liz Gale.
Me stuff. So deal with it, people. But I have Liz Gale Exposes Scientology on YouTube.
What's it called, Liz Gale?
Liz Gale Exposes Scientology. So I'm growing that one. But you don't have to.
No, I'll put them both in the Oh, good. I am subscribed.
It's a baby channel. I just started. But that's where you'll find my Scientology content, I think, moving forward.
That's this one here.
Yeah.
Right. Liz Gale Exposes Scientology. Yeah. If the moderator could drop that, that'd be fabulous. And I'll link it down below.
That's right. And the other one, if you guys just want to hang out and like walk my dog and do stupid things or whatever, get to know me. You can look at the other
Gale one. I love that.
But we're here for conspiracies and Scientology. So
we are. Tell everybody about your book, because you have actually what's going to be a series of books. And this does tie into our conspiracy theory topic.
Yes, this is Confessions of an Ex-Scientologist. It's kind of like a memoir, humor, make you laugh, make you cry type situation. It's very short format, like my content is, easy to digest. And actually in here, I have a chapter called I Am a Conspiracy Theorist, because that is one thing that maybe I would be anyway, but Scientology has this whole process. I might believe anything. I will entertain the conversation of almost anything because I find it interesting. I really do. And I find it's a part of my mind questioning reality, challenging core common beliefs that I crave now. It's like synapses were formed in my brain in Scientology and leaving Scientology. And now I'm just give me more, give me more.
Yeah. I feel since leaving Scientology too, less afraid of learning things. I noticed as I was kind of growing up that it was very much I had to focus on Scientology and what L. Ron Hubbard said, and I can't really explore other topics because it's other fish to fry, as they called it.
Right.
And never really got to learn about a lot of different things. And since leaving, I am obsessed. I like nothing more than a quiet weekend and a good rabbit hole.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, too, anything associated how do I explain this? Scientology is full of conspiracies in itself, because you go there and you're like, hey, I heard L. Ron Hubbard was married 3 times. Is that true? And they're like, no, that's a conspiracy. He was only married, twice, and here's this packet of information. Or it could be a number of things. I heard that L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, was part of the occult. No, that's a conspiracy theory. It has to do with his war history, even his war history. Oh, no, don't believe what you read. There's another level of secret truth. And I think that's the theme, secret truth. I love it. I don't believe it, but maybe my Scientology brain is always trying to get there. What's the confidential level? What's the OT level here?
What's the real squeal? Tell us about in your book. Could you read a little bit from your book that talks about, because that chapter is I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
I would love it if you would read some of it. And put a
Okay.
one in the chat if you've read Liz's book or you have Liz's book. Put a one in the chat. Some of you may have already read it, but this will be good reading for everybody else.
Okay, this is fun. This is what I'll read. Okay. This is my edited version. So it might be different if you buy the book by 2 words. Okay. This is in the chapter I'm a conspiracy theorist. Okay. Smirsh. If conspiracy theories were baby food, Smirsh was my smashed peas. It's still used as a cautionary tale for little Scientologists ready to believe that L. Ron Hubbard was a superhero and Smirsh was the villain. It goes like this. Once upon a time in the 1960s, a very special man who smoked cool cigarettes and had red hair discovered a sinister plot to take over the world by an evil group named Smirsh. Smirsh began as a secretive branch of the Red Army in the 1940s, at the tail end of World War II. This was the beginning of the Cold War, and after the bloodshed they'd gone through, the world created a new way to wage war. Instead of fighting on the battlefield, the Cold War was fought through mind games. It was all about espionage, political agendas, propaganda machines, and economic aid to fund foreign proxy wars. It was a war to take over the minds of people, to ruin the United States from the inside out. Behind this plan were the most evil and possibly alien creatures of them all, psychiatrists. Their plan to use evil psychiatry, big pharma, bankers, and mass media to drug and brainwash the people into being weak and docile. We'll stop there. Yeah. But that's what I grew up believing.
So did your family have conversations about Smirsh? And this is one that I actually had not heard. It must not have made its way to Hawaii, or at least into my family. But did your family talk about that? What was your exposure to this?
It gets pretty weird, pretty deep, pretty fast. It started out with the occult conversation. My mom occasionally had said my grandma was a witch. Of course, I grew up believing that I was my grandmother reincarnated. And so I've always been drawn to like the occult stuff, but I never really knew why. But I knew it was other.
Yeah. So did she mean she was a witch in her lifetime, that she was your grandmother, or she was a witch in a prior lifetime?
Oh Lord, who knows?
Yeah, but
I think she meant she was like a healer type witch, not like a witch. But I always was really interested in stuff like that, to be honest. And I don't really know why, but I would assume I was exposed to it pretty early on at some point, you know, just these ideas. Anyway, you have to hide that in Scientology though, right? Because anything occultist is bad, but that doesn't make sense because L. Ron Hubbard had a deep history with the occult. Anyway, long story short, he lived in this occult place with Jack Parsons, and it's a strange intersect because we have Jack Parsons and NASA and the what's that place called? Is it the Stanford Research Lab? There's a research institute that the CIA uses always. So there's these weird convex of time and place where L. Ron Hubbard was in a very specific time in a very specific place in early America, like mid-century America, when NASA was being formed, Antarctica was being discovered, science fiction was like on the cusp. Whew, okay. So I think, go to my parents and I say, why did Hubbard do this occult stuff? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I was told it was because early on in his life, in his Navy career, he was enlisted by the CIA. And he became part of clandestine operations. And within those clandestine operations, he was assigned to go live at the parsonage with Jack Parsons and break up their whatever was going on there, which we all know were FEX parties. A lot. I mean, I'll just stop there. There's a lot. So
they were trying to bring about the Antichrist.
Yeah. And all of that goes together because it's post World War II, Cold War. They're fighting ideas. They're fighting the occult. They're clandestine operations. And America had absorbed several of the top scientists from Germany. And our ideas and our life, everything was changing in the science world. So I don't know what to believe because L. Ron Hubbard's war history has been debunked. But there's this idea that there's this secret war history.
Yeah.
And who knows? That's a conspiracy, guys.
It is in Scientology. I spoke to John Atak about this, and he shared a lot about how that same story, because as Scientologists, if we questioned as Scientologists, hey, someone said that L. Ron Hubbard was involved in Aleister Crowley and black magic, like what's up with that? And the story that they have is just what you said. Actually, he infiltrated the group and he saved this girl. But there's actually huge amounts of evidence that I think is in Barefaced Messiah and also Let's Sell Them a Piece of Blue Sky that shows that he was down to clown. He was into it. He wanted to bring about this. I don't even know if you heard this one, but I just heard this recently from John Atak that he wanted to bring about the Antichrist. I knew that, but like why, right? Because L. Ron Hubbard believed that the second coming of Jesus meant the Markabians were going to return and like take over Earth. So L. Ron Hubbard's motivation in bringing about the Antichrist was to stop an alien invasion with the Markabians. Have you heard that?
Oh yeah, I for sure heard that. And it's part of that like grander history, right? Where it's like, oh, the Jesus thing is just a teeny little chapter, but that's a conspiracy. Essentially, when you're a Scientologist growing up, you think that the Jesus thing, it's like a means to an end. It's a secret.
Yeah.
Behind the secret. But yes, I have heard similar things to that. The Antichrist though, was that during the same time?
Yeah, it was during the same time, and that's what a lot of their rituals were about, is they wanted to impregnate this woman, and then she would give birth to the Antichrist, and I guess then no alien invasion. But they did not succeed, so I guess we're all still waiting on the Markabians to get here, who will arrive with the second coming.
Right. See, I think I got that mixed up with something else, because I thought that he thought he was the Antichrist and there was going to be a series of events regarding him coming back. But I don't know.
That too. No, I've heard that too. And that is the crazy thing about Scientology is I've heard that too. And I've heard references, him referring to himself as the beast. So I think it changed in time after he was involved with Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons. Right. And the evidence shows that when he was involved with Jack Parsons, that he stole a bunch of money and his girlfriend and took off.
Yes.
And
effectively disbanding. I mean, effectively, what is the word? Like if he was in the CIA to blow this cover, okay, then he did it, you know? If not, he was a real jerk. And a real a-hole, which is probably the case. Okay, so back to that. My understanding, or one of the possibilities, that it could be, is that they were making a moon child. Now, from what I understand, I don't know if it's Barefaced Messiah or John Atak's book, but they had something to do with a black cube, and I don't want to be crude here, but using a black cube as part of their ritual. Okay, we'll just say that. You guys can look it up. But black cubes have huge significance in the occult. Another thing you guys can look up. But I find it really interesting they were making a moon child, right? And I understood this to mean that they were summoning a specific character, spirit. But then later, because I collect vintage things, I found a science fiction before, it was in the 50s or 40s, of L. Ron Hubbard talking about a moon child. And then it was that he was literally creating a baby to be the first person to walk on the moon.
Oh.
Whoa. And this book was about it was sort of science fiction, but it was about I have it down in my art project, but about, I don't even know, some weird stuff about living on the moon. It was very serious. They were gonna make somebody to go to the moon. I found that theory very interesting.
That is
long-winded way to say it. Sorry, guys. I'm processing these as I say them. It's a lot.
Well, isn't there also supposedly an implant station on the moon? So where people, humans, souls, thetans, after you die or after the body dies, that
Right.
you report to the implant station and you get your memory wiped and you
Mm.
get implanted with a lot of ideas, and then you're back down to earth and you reincarnate in another body. Do you think
Yes.
that that had and the two had anything to do with each other, or he just kind of changed the story as time went on?
Okay, so I've actually been researching this a little bit, and I don't know in context to where in the evolution, like where, as time went on with him, but um wait, will you ask me that question again?
Do you think that the moon child he was
Yes,
trying to bring about to walk on the moon had anything to do, because
right,
later he talked about there being an implant station on the
right.
moon.
The dark side of the moon. That's right. Um, perhaps, but I'd also seen references to implant stations being on Mars and Venus as well.
Mhm.
And to bring it kind of back full circle, my understanding was that the story of Jesus and the emotional attachment to Jesus is one of those implants that you receive.
Yes.
Also, coincidentally, it was my understanding. I don't know if I fabricated this or if this is true, but that some are on Mars and some are on, did I say Venus? And it's, what is it? Men are from
With
Mars, women are
Mars.
from Venus. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there's actually a reference in there that women, for some reason, tend to go to Venus. L. Ron Hubbard didn't know what to do with women. He was always
Mm.
like, but then there's some women. He's always like, everybody's like this, but then there's some women. And I'm like, oh, is that me?
He's
That's
out of control, won't
yeah.
be safe, won't
There's
get in line,
some
won't do the
women.
right way. Let's just send them
Right.
to Venus.
That's right. But aside from the Antichrist, L. Ron Hubbard also claimed to be some sort of reincarnated Buddha
Yes.
later on,
Is it
right?
Matea?
Matea. Yes, that's funny. And I actually know a Scientologist girl whose name is Matea. She was born, they named her Matea. They were Scientologists, yeah. And I don't totally understand that one because I guess that was done later and it was like encoded in this weird poem.
Mhm.
But he's like, one day a redhead will come back with all the secrets. And I'm like, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. You know what he said? A redhead man.
Yeah. Exactly.
Jerk.
Yeah, I think it was Him of Asia.
Yes, Hit of Asia.
That
I
was
believe I
all.
have a copy of that too. It's
Oh,
yeah, it's useless. It was probably very expensive.
yeah. It doesn't make it he changed the story over the years, it seems, as things evolved and changed.
Right.
This theory of his history and who he was would change, and then when the truth would start to come out because the critics were like, "Oh my gosh, no, that's not what happened. Here's
Right.
actual evidence." Scientology would label it a conspiracy theory. Like, "No,
Right.
that's conspiracy theory. That actually did not happen." Same thing with his war record and what his injuries were.
Mhm.
It was all labeled that way. Oh, this is interesting. Joker 37 says there's a Buddha Maitreya monastery in Northern California right now. You can Google it. Ooh. Because
Hmm.
in that book, doesn't he claims to be, he outright claimed, and then I think he got changed to a question, am I
Yeah.
Matea?
Yes,
Instead of,
that's
I
it.
am Matea. And you're right.
Right.
The I don't remember the whole prediction, but you're right, it was a redheaded man, and I knew a lot of Scientologists who at the time believed that, because
Yeah.
growing up in Hawaii, Buddhism is a big religion, and my step family were Japanese, and prior to Scientology, I believe they were Buddhists. In fact,
Yeah.
my step grandmother had a Buddhist funeral.
Mhm.
And so when that came out, where I was growing up in Scientology in Hawaii, that was a huge deal. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, yes, that makes so much sense that L. Ron Hubbard would be this Buddha. I might have it wrong, but I think Mateo was like the original Buddha or something like that. Do you know?
I don't know. I feel like it's par for the course for these, it's one of the powerful ones that's going to come back, and when they come back, it signifies another huge set of events.
Yeah.
That's like, and that feels like the common story with him. Even what is it? Target 2, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a God complex.
You're right. I didn't think about it like that. I was earlier today, I was recording a video about I was reacting to his affirmations, which is gonna be out tonight, 6 PM Central,
Oh.
y'all. Very short, very sweet, full of a lot of crazy.
Mhm.
But that kinda was my takeaway. Like, I always knew it's like growing up in my family, we're like, "Oh, L. Ron Hubbard, he's so benevolent, and he's doing
Mm,
all these things for mankind, and he is a Buddha," which went really well with the culture in
right.
Hawaii. And then that starts to change. Like, what was it like for you in terms of the stories or some other conspiracy theories about him?
Well, I mean, the affirmations were one of my turning points about
Oh,
believing
really?
things. Yeah, well, because uh okay, so I'm working on my red string project. Basically, what that is all these conspiracies, all these things that I found out were true that I was lied to, the like forbidden truth, right? And so a lot of the connections with the occult are up there, and all sorts of things. But the earth that opened the door, and the affirmations, like you're saying, I mean, he said certain things in there where he knows he's powerless and he wants to be powerful. I won't spoil your video or throw, because I'm sure it's going to be great. There's lots of amazing things in those affirmations, but it shows a weak man.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
shows a weak, insecure man. And
yeah.
that's okay. Like, I like an honest, vulnerable, authentic person. But when you go from that to I am source, and then you start charging a lot of money and telling us that everything that everybody says about them is lies, it's just that for me, that was one of my final dominoes to fall. I'm trying to think what other, I mean, it's hard. Now you draw the line where like, what's just a lie and what's a conspiracy, you know?
I wonder if labeling it a conspiracy theory makes it I wonder if that makes it more disbelievable for people versus a lie? I'm curious. How
Well,
would I word that as a question? I wanna ask the chat. If you think about what seems worse or more unbelievable? Something that is you're told is a lie or something you're told is a conspiracy theory? So,
right.
jump in the chat, and if you replay in the on the replay, jump in the comments. What is more powerful, a lie or being told it's a conspiracy theory? Like, what makes you more move away from it? Because
Mhm.
when in Scientology, they would use that word, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory."
Mhm.
It wasn't as, like, final to me as if something was like,
Right.
"Well, that's a lie, that's actually not true." And I was very
Right.
curious about that. Why was I remember this particular he was the director of special affairs in the Twin Cities, and I was a hardcore Scientologist in good standing. I was even doing a little bit of press for Scientology,
Mhm.
and so he was like my handler, right? If anything came up that sounded like propaganda or a black PR, then he would, get that corrected. But I noticed that he used the words conspiracy theory versus an
Mhm.
outright lie.
Yeah. Well, someone in the chat mentioned that conspiracy theory, actually, which is why I brought it up originally, is a CIA term that was put out to discredit um, theories,
No
right? So it's,
way.
yeah. So it's a specific. That's why it's the original conspiracy. Well, it's not the original, but it's a good example because the term itself is a conspiracy theory because it was put out by the CIA to have a way to describe something that's BS, but you'll never really know. You just know it's not true.
Yeah.
That's what, like a lie, you're gonna get an answer, right? In order to know something's a lie, there has to be a truth. It's black and white.
Mm.
Conspiracy theories are never black and white. They're always like in the shadows. Um, and actually, the CIA. Okay. First of all, everybody, did you know that you can go onto FBI's website, and there is a huge download of chunks of data from like the 1940s to the 2000s? That's the Freedom of Information Act Scientology files. Okay. In there, you will see that there's been this interaction, push and pull, multiple investigations with the FBI back and forth for forever. Now, Operation Snow White, so we're going to fast forward to the 70s. Operation Snow White, which you might know, but the audience can know, was still one of the largest infiltrations of the United States government of all time. 5,000 Scientology agents went undercover, got jobs. Some people got legitimate jobs, got new identities. I know people who climbed in office building windows after dark, did Xeroxing, and like put everything back and climbed back out. I mean, to be a spy in the 60s or 70s is like, sign me up. Before
And this is
technology.
Scientology. This is
Yes.
Scientology spies.
This is Scientology spies. However, let's not forget, everything in the Sea Org, or a lot of things in Scientology, the way it's worked, is modeled after the Navy. Okay?
True.
The Navy has a naval intelligence, which actually is pretty hardcore, right? And so this, I think, is where the CIA will recruit people. That's the idea that I got. And it's been happening since. This is the idea why L. Ron Hubbard could have potentially got involved with the CIA early on. But either way, if you look at what Scientology says, they're like, why did they do Snow White? Why did they spend all this energy taking 5,000 people? That's a conspiracy. 5,000 people keeping a secret. Why? It was because they had already been infiltrated by the FDA, the FBI, and the CIA.
They meaning Scientology.
Scientology. With undercover agents. I know. And there's further proof of this because later you've heard of the remote viewing projects that the CIA put on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it was in the 70s, I want to say. Anyway, they recruited a bunch of top Scientologists.
Who was the main guy? Was it Price? Was Price his last name?
Swan.
And was he a Scientologist? No worries. What was the guy's name, y'all? Kelly Copter, good to see you. Love your thumbnail for this one. Thank you, girl. Gonna catch up properly later. Just dropping by to show some aloha. I appreciate you. Pat Price, Deanna Ross. Exactly. That's the name I was looking for. And Deanna, I was thinking about you because Pat Price was one of these remote viewers. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about this from Liz Gale. He was a Scientologist. He was also at Deanna and Chuck Ross's wedding, right? Back in the day, if I remember that correctly. Pat Price was the other name I was trying to recall. A Scientologist who was a remote viewer who was sharing the secrets he was learning with Scientology while he was working as a remote viewer for the U.S. government.
So was he a triple agent then?
Double.
Ingo
Swan. Yeah.
That's the one I remembered.
Yeah. So tell us what you know, girl.
I can't. I cough. Hold on again.
Oh, no worries. Get it out. Poor girl. Andrew, who's Russell Targ? Was he another one who was involved in that project? Let me know. But yeah, for sure it was Pat Price and Ingo Swan. Andrew says, broke my heart to find out the main scientist was a Scientologist. Yes. And then to understand that he was sharing things, he would remote view, share that with the government, the CIA, whoever it was. And then he would share it with his Scientology handler. So Scientology was finding everything out that he was remote viewing, whether it was correct or not. Like, I don't know. But that blew my mind too. Like, whoa.
Yeah, he was OT7. That was the highest you could go at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that fascinating. I gotta have a cough drop now, guys. That was rough. I get so excited. I don't think I took a breath.
So you were saying Ingo Swan, you were starting to talk about that.
Okay. There's also this idea that David Miscavige was put into Scientology as the new leader, as a coup, to use it as a research base because the CIA and the FBI and the FDA always recognized that it was like this weird petri dish.
Yeah.
And they wanted to find out what the technology could do because it's highly hypnotic. It's highly controllable. Makes people highly controllable. And so I think it's so interesting, all these overlaps, particularly with the CIA. And then if you look at the old Freedom magazines, they are dogging the CIA every 5 seconds. They say that the CIA was behind Jonestown.
In Freedom Mag, Scientology's magazine.
Yes. They say all these, like, you can go through, but it's peppered with all of these. Everything was really the CIA. Everything.
Interesting.
And I find that interesting because I don't know if that's true or not. But it's this perception that I still have. Might be true.
And I've heard that theory too, that David Miscavige was actually put in place by the CIA to do exactly what you said. I guess what maybe flies in the face of that is what actual research these days, like since primarily, even after L. Ron Hubbard died in 86, has been being done. You know, back in the day, it seemed like there was more openness in Scientology about whether it was remote viewing or being able to just have different perceptions. Because even though Scientology claims to increase those perceptions, and that would be an operating thetan ability, it does seem at the same time that they weren't down with it. It just was one of the many contradictions in Scientology.
Right.
Like what is really the truth?
Right. Well, like my father, for example, he didn't grow up in Scientology. He got into Scientology, I'm pretty sure, because he believed he would get superpowers, right? The higher OT levels, you're supposed to be, what is it? Power over matter, energy, space, and time, MEST, right? So if you just take that on face value, your power over matter, space, energy, and time, you are a god.
Yeah.
At least in this realm, in the physical universe.
Yeah.
So there's these superpowers that I think some people were chasing. And I think remote viewing falls into that, right? You're talking about exteriorization, the spirit having powers aside from the body. So it is kind of a contradiction. Like, why then now is it a secret? Why weren't you and I raised being like, we're so proud the CIA came over and they wanted to see our OTs because we can, you know, fly to Russia in spirit and we can peek at their numbers and save the world. Why aren't they doing that? I mean, we know why, but it's just this cognitive dissonance because it's you pay all this money to get to this state and then you know secretly you can't remote view, but now you think other people can. I don't know. It's too much.
Which maybe that's why sometimes I think that maybe that's why, because there were no true OT abilities, truly.
Right.
And that, you know, was that the justification because the CIA got involved? And even the idea or the conspiracy theory that the CIA infiltrated Scientology. Well, but you said earlier on, like it was the CIA, the FDA, the FBI.
Yes.
But that, because they can't explain why nobody truly gets these operating thetan abilities and power. Right. So even if it started off that way, that the CIA was infiltrating because, hey, what do we have here? Because Pat Price is a Scientologist and he can remote view, you know, and there were a few other people like that. And then they actually, what if it was they actually found out that no, however they can do this, it's not because of Scientology. Which I think, personally, I believe there's more truth in that.
There is a CIA document. We can share a link in the chat after if you want. It's not hard to find, but there is a CIA document associated with remote viewing. And they very clearly state that they can take a person who has natural psychic abilities and they can go through a number of steps to, I guess they say, teach this to someone. So that distinction of having natural psychic abilities, I don't know, it stood out to me a little bit. Yeah. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, but that's in distinct difference of the philosophy of Scientology that anybody can attain this by doing the steps.
Yeah, exactly. And I wonder if the dogging of the CIA wasn't because the CIA was like, yeah, you know what, you guys actually don't have secret abilities, but over here, we've kind of figured it out. So we don't need you. And then it became dog the CIA.
Right. Well, do you remember, I don't know how often you had to do this, but sometimes I don't even know why. I would do these interviews on the meter and part of the questions would be, Are you a journalist? Are you working for, I forget what, but like federal agencies? Are you a spy for the government? I think, were you a spy for the government is a question. I've been asked this at like 6 years old, like over and over. Like, I don't think so. Maybe. I'm not sure.
It's like a Manchurian candidate situation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, then think of my past lives. Here I am 6, like, oh man, I must have been a spy for some government.
Mhm.
Probably in a past life, statistically, thousands of times.
Yeah, because why would they be asking that otherwise?
Yeah. So here I am, just like guilty.
Mhm. Which would then be like a miss withhold and probably make the meter read
Mhm.
because you'd
Yep.
get nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of that. I think it's the A to J check they called it, where it was like, do you have are
Yeah.
you part of the CIA? Do you or a member of your family work for the media?
Right. I've had
So
my
we're
own
probably-
mother ask me that.
If you work for the CIA?
Well, she has to go through all the questions.
Oh,
She was
that's
auditing me. Yeah. I'm just like laughing. I'm like, yeah, mom. Yeah. I'm part of the CIA. Yeah.
Did you hear that there was a conspiracy theory going around that Tori Magoo 44 here on YouTube was part of the CIA, that it was Scientology saying, because an interesting thing happened at some point. Scientology got into this witch hunt and it became like, oh, she secretly works for the CIA.
Yeah.
That's why she left Scientology.
I'm telling you, they are like one of those relationships that you see on reality TV where they like break up and then they're in love and then they break up. I swear that's Scientology with the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And they know each other's dirty secrets. And it sounds like a freaking conspiracy, but I'm going to say it. I honestly think that there's some knowledge to be gained in the weird Scientology bubble. Like, you know how you study the islands of the tribes who haven't been touched by man for like never, and it's fascinating. And we're not saying that this is the way to live, but it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Scientology is kind of like that, and it's awful because it has been at the expense of vulnerable people in the past. But if you just take the like consenting adults, and you're like, it's like a Stanford experiment, you know? And because of the way L. Ron Hubbard thought, so much of it is like MK Ultra style crap. I mean, do you know about MK Ultra very much?
Not a ton, a little bit, but do share with us.
I mean, probably I'll get it all wrong. But basically it was a series. I don't know if it was the branch or the series of experiments, but they're these mind control experiments, right? You've seen it in like every shady movie or like Stranger Things. It's where this clandestine research that typically is very unethical, highly unethical. And there's a lot of evidence that type of research was being done in Germany. I probably can't say the N word on your channel, but in World War II, we know that our national enemy was doing really messed up research on the people that they had essentially enslaved. And they were going into the supernatural and the mind and how to break a person and how to make a person conform. And they were using substances and they were using pain techniques, and again, highly unethical. But I think that's the mindset that L. Ron Hubbard came from with his approach to researching and interacting with that type of world or science. And so there's, in a weird way, Scientology has this strange like DNA of that's been going on for 70 years. And so there is some information in there. It's like, whoa, like we're kind of a petri dish. Like, wow, what happens when you raise somebody generationally in this? Well, you know, turns out a little wacky.
That is interesting. I didn't think about it that way, how it could be like a long-term study in a way. There's been so many theories about it, but there's something there when Scientology itself has had such incredible paranoia when it comes to being infiltrated. And I get it. You were infiltrated before, so you're a little butthurt, right? But the inappropriate...
What'd you do to pull it in, Scientology?
Exactly. They never talk about that.
Never talk about that.
No.
Mm-mm.
Yet, and it's a real turnoff for new people when
Mhm.
they're put on the e-meter and first asked, do you or any members of your family work for the media? Do you or any of your families work for the CIA, FBI, or any government entity? Like, you gotta be like, "Why?" And because we grew up in it, it's like, well, of course they ask that. They always ask that.
Right.
But to someone new to Scientology as an adult or people never in Scientology, that's weird.
It is super weird. I don't even know if they still do it now because it's so weird. Like, I don't know at what point they're doing it now because
Mhm.
it's such a turnoff. But there is a certain number of people, right? That's the other thing we need to consider. Cults, sometimes their harsh checkpoints are to weed people out.
True.
Like, logistically, if you work for the CIA, we don't want you. But also, if that question makes you uncomfortable, we don't want you. We want
That's a
the
really great
person.
point, Liz.
Yeah, we want the person who's like, hell no, I don't work for the CIA.
Yeah.
No, they're crazy. Have you heard about? And they're like, you're our guy. So, you know,
That's a
works both
great
ways.
point. I never really thought about it that way as more of a weeding out, not what your answers are, but how well you'll tolerate this type of invasive behavior.
It's probably a combination of, they really want to know if you work for the CIA. Like,
Yeah.
they actually want to know on a lie detector if you work for the CIA. But
Yeah.
there's other elements. The other thing I do think, I should say, is I don't know, I don't necessarily, how to explain this. The CIA, the idea that they've infiltrated and they're keeping Scientology alive to research it is not really what I was saying so much as like the CIA is well aware of Scientology and they have their eye on it. And there's probably something valuable there that they keep a close eye on it. That's kind of what I meant.
I wonder what they think that is. Let's talk a little bit about, let's talk about aliens.
Ooh.
Because in
Mhm.
Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, it is not limited to the upper levels on the OT levels with
Right.
Xenu, but in multiple lectures,
Mhm.
he's very open about flying spaceships and these
Mhm.
the Marcabs and
Mhm.
loyal officers and all of the things. What is your thought about this? Or what was it growing up and what is it now as far as
Mm.
Scientology's focus on? And don't you think it's weird he never called them aliens? I don't remember L. Ron Hubbard using the word alien. I remember him using the word beings,
That's
that
true.
we were all
Mhm.
beings on other planets. And, I don't hate it because I, for one, believe somewhere out there, there's definitely other life. I just can't imagine that it would just be us. You really hope not.
Ooh, what a waste.
Right? You hope someone somewhere is just doing it better. And maybe
Yeah.
one day, we'll get to go over there. I don't know. But L. Ron Hubbard always referred to them as beings.
Mhm.
We are beings, we're thetans, not
Mhm.
so much, then he took the aliens and froze them in ice cubes. He
Mhm.
talks about them as people, that it was similar to Earth. And I don't know if that's why. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on Scientology and aliens?
Uh, okay, two things. First of all, I grew up with believing L. Ron Hubbard's past life stories, right? So different lectures or different courses or different books, he'll pepper in these stories that he remembers a past life, right? And so these stories became almost like Bible stories in a way, right? I was a poor student. I'm not saying I retained them all, but I had these grand visions of L. Ron Hubbard um, flying spaceships and shooting and protecting as well as racing chariots as a Roman in ancient Rome. I see him as Matea, this early. I don't see him now, but as a child, right? So
Yeah.
he was this man that lived all these lives. And so the line between science fiction and his life, there was no line for me. I grew up believing that the reason L. Ron Hubbard is was and is a prolific science fiction writer is that he lived all these things. Maybe some are fabricated here and there, but these are his memories. And because of Scientology, he has perfect memory of his whole track. And therefore, he can just churn these stories out because he doesn't have to think of them. They're
Mm.
true, right? So now this means to me as a child that Earth's history, the universe's history, involves the federations, galactic federations, and wars and history and all this stuff. However, L. Ron Hubbard was so short-sighted in many ways. We were always human. We were often white. Our technologies never really went beyond like hydrogen and atomic powers. You know, like our spaceships had like 1955 Cadillac engines, you know, like these really dumb short-sightedness, but it doesn't matter because I believed it all. And so in that scope, yeah, aliens are they're not aliens. They're just beings. We were those beings. You wouldn't call yourself an alien, would you? You were just, you know, a whatever and a whatever and a whatever in these other lifetimes. So I believed all of that to be factual history. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it totally does. And you're right. I remember growing up thinking the same thing, that these were all things that, you know, that he recalled. And I don't doubt too that the amount of information, and former Scientologists in the chat or on the replay, jump in those comments and tell me what you think about this. That's what opened the door, so that when we were getting Scientology auditing and we were searching earlier similar, that it was easier for our imagination to go to these stories of flying spaceships and all of that.
Yes. Well, and you're asked questions, right? Like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I have 100% experienced this on multiple occasions where I'm in a closed room with a person in power, an adult, and I'm a kid. I'm holding the cans on an e-meter. They're asking me a question. Have you ever, you know, run a baby farm? True question. Have you ever, are you a spy for the CIA? Right? And you can't actually leave that room. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what happens on the e-meter. And so there's this disconnect, right? And it's always earlier similar, because a bunch of Scientology, the whole thing of Scientology is that if you find the first time something happened, and you get that trauma gone, all the other trauma will like pop off like like a popcorn chain. Boop, 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 boop. It's like bubble blast of trauma. Right?
That's so true. Yeah. The further you go back, if you can get the earliest, the first time that happened, that you would even have to address all the other bits of trauma. I'm dying to talk to the psychologist next week about that. Jordan Horn's coming back on. He's a psychologist I've been talking to. I'm dying to talk to him about that. Nancy Stidgen here. And Nancy, thank you. I've been looking for you, Nancy. You made my day the other day when I went to the P.O. box. This girl just showered me with a ton of love and stuff from my Amazon wish list. It was amazing. So nice. I was like, in tears. I was like, Nancy, you made my day, because it's been.
You needed the love. You needed a good call, Nancy. Good call.
Yeah. So thank you, Nancy. Liz, growing up, were you exposed to extended family members that weren't Scientologists, or did you only have your immediate family believed?
Yes, I did have some family that was not Scientologists. My father got into it, and his family wasn't. He did have kind of a falling out with his dad about it. There was some issues there with the relationship. And my mom had we had some extended family, kind of older, like different line. I will say this though. The thing that they both had in common is that they both played really, really nice. And I don't know now, looking back, if that was the move. But again, I know that if they hadn't played nice about Scientology, my parents would have cut them off, and then I wouldn't have had a relationship with them. But but I would have never talked about any of this stuff. I was literally coached on how to speak with my outside family about, you know, what I was doing and what things were like. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, you had to give acceptable truth there. So you really weren't that close or had a lot of exposure to outside family who weren't believers in Scientology.
Right. They were there, but we didn't talk about that.
No, you just lived in an echo chamber. I'm curious, have you spoken to them since you left Scientology?
Yeah, they all hate it.
Yeah. What was, did you get, because I had this happen a few times because I had family members that as long as I was in Scientology, they were cool and quiet about it. But as soon as we left, the truth came out.
Yeah.
Was that your experience?
Pretty much. You know, the big one that I had been so worried about was my grandma, was my dad's mom. My dad loved his mom so very much. And it was him that had a falling out with his father. And so and then his father died. And so there was this preciousness about his relationship with his mom.
Yeah.
And then, as far as I know, they didn't talk about Scientology at all. And then my father died. And then my mom was raising us hardcore Scientology, and she never said anything. And then my brother passed away, and she like definitely pulled away, but didn't say anything. And then when I finally was like, I was so mad. I wrote her a letter. I'm never giving another red cent to Scientology. She called me, and she was just like, I'm so happy to hear that. Like, that must be hard. Let me know how I can help you. Like, how'd you get here? And then I just told her everything. And she was just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, she was very supportive. But
Yeah,
it's hard. It's a weird place to be. I don't know what I mean, she did the right thing. She loved me unconditionally, but there's also a part of me that's just like, I don't have time to play. You know, it's one thing if you're raising your kids in Scientology. It's another thing if you're abusing your children.
Yeah.
You know, so those are two different things, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah. No, very different. And you are right. So back to aliens.
Aliens. Were you an alien? Do you have any past life? Did you ever attest to anything? Being in
Totally. Yeah. Because I did through operating Thetan level 4.
Yeah.
So there was all kinds of that because not just your own, but when you're auditing body Thetans, you got to deal with their issues too.
Man.
And it's all done telepathically.
Right.
But absolutely. And I remember thinking just like, well, okay. I mean, I was so open to the possibility because I remember in the course room speaking to the supervisor about it, like, like this is a lot to take in. But one of the things that they said was like, well, if you never knew about Christianity, if you'd never heard of it before, and someone said, okay, we want you to drink the blood of Christ and, here, eat him too, and a virgin birth, that would seem really bizarre to you. So they would pull that card of, it's just because it's new that it feels weird and odd. And I thought, well, actually, that there's some logic there that, yeah, if I knew nothing about it, if there wasn't 2,000 years of buildup and familiarity with Christianity and some of those beliefs, it would seem as odd as body Thetans and Xenu and the Galactic Confederation. So why can one be true? How can there be, how can there be an immaculate conception, but there couldn't be people have lived before? And so I was much more open to that. And the other thing is when you're auditing in Scientology as a public person, like I was, you are paying by the minute. So you learn quick, at least I did. Like if you
audit yourself,
well, you pay for the level, but even leading up to it, you're like, you're paying, you better come up with something. And I just thought, well, I guess, I mean, the auditor's going along with this. It seems like this is what happens. I guess this could happen. There was a spaceship and I was flying through a tunnel and something went wrong. And it was probably all plots from Star Wars or something that I'd seen. But in Scientology auditing, as you know, they don't question you. You can say you were whoever in a past life.
As long as your needle moves the way it's supposed to move.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about this in my book that I totally attested to being Queen Elizabeth in my past life. And then I found out, well, I was like, I was a redhead in a past life. I've been a redhead so many times. I've been named Elizabeth. I was Queen Elizabeth. And then he was like, thank you, your needle's floating. And I was like, really? And then I went to exams and it was floating. I was like, thank you, your needle's floating. I was like, okay, that must be it. I must be Queen Elizabeth. And then like 4 years later, I found out that is one of the most commonly attested to past lifetimes, because apparently she was so suppressive that many people or Thetans took on her valence. Now I'm getting in the weeds here. So essentially, most likely, according to this logic, I was a servant of some sort or a oppressed person of Queen Elizabeth.
And then you took on that
That's
valence. You took on the personality of your oppressor.
Yes. But then when I'm looking back on it, my identity identifies as the valence so in Scientology, a valence is like a personality that's not yours that you like take on. And so they say if somebody is oppressing you, one of the survival tactics you might do is take on that same personality. So like maybe there's a bunch of mean girls, you need to survive, you become a mean girl. That's like the most basic.
Yeah.
You identify as that. But I was like, oh, I'm Queen Elizabeth. I don't know. It's stupid, you guys, but welcome to my life.
And then you're not supposed to tell anybody that, because in
No.
Scientology, you're not supposed to talk about your case, but dang, people do or did.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's tea. That's tea. The other thing that becomes tea, which I find so interesting, is young children and parents who like Scientologists who are raising young children, right? Because there's this idea that like you have this squishy state where you could recall past life stuff and it becomes a part of your lore for like your whole life, right? So like I have somebody, a young girl in our family, she had a dream and who knows what it really is. Okay. I'm not saying past lives do or don't exist or kids can or can't remember them. But in this case, she said she was an old man and she was looking for her boat. And several nights in a row, she kind of woke up in this thing. She's like, where's my boat? My money's on my boat. I got to find my boat. And so this became a part. The assumption was she died, an old man living on a boat. She's not quite remembering that she's passed. And so she's her valences are switching around. She's kind of becoming this old man again, wondering where all her crap is.
Yeah.
And so as her family, what we need to do is help her as a spirit come into the present time, acknowledge her new body. But this becomes a part of this person's lore, right? You're like, oh, you're so-and-so, and you were raised this and that, and you were an old man on a boat in a past life, and you like elephants. Like, it's just part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird how that happens.
Yeah. What do you think the effects on a person would be on a person who grew up in that scenario when that pressure is put on them in Scientology that you are this? And now, because it happens with a lot of Scientologists, when you're a Sea Org member, you're held to a higher ethical standard. Mm-hmm. When you do the operating thetan levels, you're held to a higher ethical standard. That's why I got in trouble for doing strip fitness, because I did it after I was already OT. And that's their beef with it, is it so much interferes with who you are as a person. But
let me at him. I could have talked you out of that ethics cycle so fast. But anyway, keep going.
But it has that impact, just like you were saying, that person who was told, or that was what that person was recalling, but then it was, validated and pushed. I feel like so much of it growing up in Scientology is often put upon us.
Oh, yeah.
And we're all, that's every Scientology parent, not every, but a lot of Scientology parents, dream is to have a child who is a former Scientologist. So there's like this emphasis on it. So, I attested to being a past life clear and having been in Scientology before. The interesting thing was, in all the auditing that I did in Scientology, like I never got to be anybody famous. So I just always sucked in my past lives. In fact,
you blew an opportunity.
Exactly. I shared. This was probably, I don't know which Scientology auditing it was. It could have been my Clear Certainty Rundown. I'm not sure. That I was a Scientologist in a past life at St. Hill. And I was in Scientology, but then I left. And I ended up in the hands of the psychs. And then I went and infiltrated Scientology. Like that was somehow...
up. I had such a similar, that is so wild. I swear we're all programmed the same. Did you say it? That was one thing I did not say in session.
No, I said it. I said, I think I got into the hand of the psychiatrist or somebody, but they were basically trying to deprogram me from Scientology. And then I went and spied for them on Scientology. So just keep that in mind. Hold that in your head. So Scientology is now hearing me saying last
Yeah.
lifetime I was a spy against Scientology for the
Yeah.
site. And I'm the one they let on to the upper OT levels this lifetime, which I don't know, maybe I proved them right or proved myself right being where I am today. But tell me about your
Whoa.
experience. Because, yeah.
If I just have to comment that if anything, you proved to them that your entire thinking was completely what they had told you. So
Yeah.
in that way, it was good. So when I was on staff at the Portland org, I was the public executive secretary, and the Free Winds mission came around. That's Scientology's cruise ship, and they come around and they go to each city and they try and get people to sign up for their stuff and come to them. Because not only do they have the confidential levels, but they have all these little congresses and week-long this and that. And they're always trying to pitch it as like a vacation. So I pay $2,500. My parents, I was 19, $2,500 because you have to pay, even though it's staff and it's technically training for my whatever, $2,500. Pay for it. Then I have to do my eligibility interview, and that's where they asked me a bunch of questions, and I did have that thought. Oh my gosh, because I already knew I was a past life Scientologist. I was like, oh my gosh, I was declared in a past life, and I did not say it. They were and they were displeased with my interview that I did not get to go, did not receive a refund for my $2,400.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you weren't qualified to go on the ship?
Indeed, I was not qualified to go on the ship because I had that thought, but I didn't say it. But I don't know if they would have let me or not let me, but my needle was like dirty. They were like, you're not saying something. That was like one of the only times where I ever pretty much was like, I can't say this. I will get in trouble, which I don't know why I was scared to admit that in a past life, I potentially possibly was like an SP, but that label is eternal, right? That's a spiritual label. That's not a, hey, this girl in this life acts bad. That's a no. If they declared you last lifetime, you still are. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I never got to like an FN, a floating needle, which is where, it's what they wanted to see. And therefore I was not allowed to go. I was not eligible to go on the Free Winds, but I was still eligible to pay $2,400 to go on the Free Winds.
Wow.
And to avoid a flap, because I was freaking pissed. Because some of it was my money, but the rest was my mom's money. I was 19 and I worked on staff. I didn't have any money. Okay. So I was like very upset. And I was like, logically, you guys shouldn't have taken my money until after you did the eligibility. Like, that's off policy. And they're like, no, it's not. It's on policy. And they like showed me. And I'm like, great. Well, the whole system's messed up. My mom, to avoid a flap, she said she paid me back the money I had paid. It was like $600. And then she had them transfer it to her account. And she said, I'll use it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because you could do that. How hilarious would it be if that were the truth? If we really, our last lifetime, tried to end Scientology and we're labeled suppressives. And here we are again doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, then Scientology should probably as is us then, right?
Mm.
In Scientology, it's a silly term, but they should probably acknowledge or give us some sort of acknowledgement that anything we're saying, like, it's just gaslight for probably generations and lifetimes. But all of these things together, like, I think everybody in the audience is getting, like, this is a weird way of thinking. And when you're already primed to these like very strange, out of the norm, pseudoscientific, like pretty much weird faith-based jumps,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot easier then when somebody comes to you and they're like, oh, did you hear about, JFK? There were 2 men. You're like, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's aliens on Earth. Oh, yeah, probably.
Sure.
Yeah. The government lied to us again, and X, Y, and Z is actually a ruse. Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah. I wonder how many other suppressive people, and if there's anybody in the chat, let us know. Were any of you, did you attest to being a last life Scientologist? And if so, were you declared and trying to end Scientology like Liz and I?
Yeah. Well, and I've said before, like, in the mental gymnastics, if I'm my grandmother got my whole family into Scientology. Thanks to her, there's 70, ish years and many generations is still in. And so then like full circle with that mental gymnastics is, well, if I got us in, doesn't that mean that I'm supposed to be the one to get us out? Right. So there does be, if you start thinking like that, like playing their game, it can backfire. Yeah. They should probably have thought about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of it from their point of view, because I remember at the time, even when I was saying it, like, I don't know, and it just really felt real, like, that's what was coming to mind, like, I could see it in my head, and I think that's what a lot of Scientology auditing is,
Mhm.
your mind just kinda runs away with a narrative, but if I were controlling the narrative, I guess what I'm saying is, I didn't feel that I was making it up when it was
Right.
happening in a Scientology session.
Right.
So, if I were making it up, I feel like I coulda came up with something so much better, or that would put me in a better situation or light with Scientology. Because saying, "Oh, yeah,
Oh,
last
yeah.
lifetime, I tried to end Scientology,"
Woulda,
not
coulda, shoulda, right? Like, I would've been like, "I'm Tom Cruise's grandma," and he'd be like, "You're the best lady," whatever. But I have to ask you though, how much of that was directed by the e-meter? And how much would have you have been as certain of those past life memories if you had not had the e-meter giving you feedback and like confirmation bias and then moving on?
Yeah, that's correct. No, I would not have, because I didn't sit around. I don't recall ever sitting around and contemplating my past lives or thinking about it, because we also weren't allowed to do that. You weren't supposed to
Don't
stir up
list.
your own case. Exactly.
Self list.
Oh my god, I forgot about that
It's
term.
a crime. Don't have anxiety, they might as well say.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. In
Mhm,
Scientology, there's a phrase called self-listing, where you come up
mhm,
with reasons why
mhm.
something's wrong or what's going
Right.
on with you, and you're listing out all the reasons.
Mhm.
That is done in a Scientology auditing session. You're not allowed to do it outside of. But you're right, that is basically anxiety.
Yeah.
So they had us convinced that if you start feeling anxiety, oh no, no, don't think about it. Don't think
Mhm.
about that anxiety.
Yeah. And furthermore, it's also like if you try to do this yourself, you'll get into trouble. You need the e-meter. You need us because you're not capable of sorting it out, right? Like, okay, I stubbed my toe. Why did that happen? Did I leave a shoe? Did I whatever? Like, don't self-list. You
Yeah.
have to go somewhere else to get the answer. That's so silly.
Well, you have to pay to get the
Yeah,
answer.
exactly.
I think that's
That's
really what it was. Those
mhm,
actual things that actually create change, you have to pay for in
mhm.
Scientology versus, just somebody helping you out with something.
Right, right.
I
But it
wanted
all leads to this acceptance that there's a shore story, there's the
Yeah,
general information everybody knows, then there's a secret bit of information, and then there's like top secret information. And that is how conspiracy theories are bred and presented, even if it's truth.
yeah.
So it's wild.
I
Yeah.
wish that Scientologists could talk more about this, because you can't really I don't remember having conversations with other Scientologists that were really open, because you weren't supposed to talk about your past lives, but even, like, with
Right.
aliens and stuff that much, which is, when you think about it, is kinda weird, given that L. Ron Hubbard talked about these other beings so much, and before you got onto the operating thetan levels and learned about body thetans, there was a lot of talk about other lifetimes,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that more people didn't talk about it is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Well, it is because I mean, in the perception of Scientology, right? This lifetime is a sliver in your existence. So if
Mhm.
you're embracing your identity through the eyes of a Scientology lens, this is just a little bit of who you are. Your whole track actually is more than this life. Like everybody, all the lives you lived before are exponentially more time. You know what though? Something you said, this is kind of crazy. You do have people talking about their past lives. But usually it's not in that public sphere. It's in that hidden knowledge or that secret knowledge sphere, but it still exists, right? And so in Scientology for 70 years, we have had people having memories and then presenting them. But because of the culture and essentially the policy, that's fact. So
Yeah.
I'd be so interested in having like a generational Scientologist like write a history book, because I would think that over time, like if you and I remember some space war and we're like, it was in 1433 BC, like now that becomes a point of history,
Mhm.
right? It's not fiction anymore. It's not even a conspiracy theory. It's fact. So I just wonder how 70 years of that, of these like, secret conversations and like, this is how it really is in the Federation. And it's like, where do we stand today? I don't even know.
Yeah. Or how would it be different today if people were actually allowed to talk about it or did? If it wasn't so
Yeah.
secret, right? If it could just all be
Right.
in the open, if you could just discuss it and
Right.
discuss Scientology concepts openly, which people who were in Scientology in the early days, I've heard from them that, oh, we did back then. You could
Yeah.
openly have these conversations.
Well, have you ever seen the book, or do you have access to the book, Have You Lived Before This Life?
I've seen it, but I don't have a
Yeah.
copy.
Now, I'm not sure if that one melded together to make History of Man. I'm not sure, but one of those books, it starts out by saying this is a cold, hard, factual history of
Yeah,
existence.
History of Man.
Yeah. So, but then maybe it's the other one then, but they have actual lives, like lifetime, like case studies where they're like, I audited this guy and it's all these past life things. And they're so funny. I remember one was like this weird toy store, this like space age toy store, but they had toy zebras and toy giraffes. And then they like exploded. And it was like this whole incident, right? But I remember thinking to myself, like, gosh, L. Ron Hubbard was such a genius. He thought of so many things, but how? How could have giraffes and zebras and elephants evolved on another planet in space for them to have a toy?
Yeah.
Like it's so, but this is fact. It's cold, hard fact.
Yeah. We're all clams. We come from
Yeah.
clams. That's
Yeah.
why we have anxiety.
Exactly. So throw a regular old conspiracy theory at me, and I'm like, sure. And even crazy ones, right? Like even the taboo ones, right? Like flat Earth. Ooh, flat Earth, for example. Do I believe the Earth is flat? No. But I find it fascinating that it's this power struggle, right? Where it's like this idea that there's this huge cover up. It's this idea that technology has been put in place to feed a giant group of people a bunch of lies, and the top people in power know it, but they don't care because they have some sort of agenda. And everybody in the world goes, that's not possible. That could never happen. And I go, yeah, but it happened already with Operation Snow White. It happens in Scientology every day, right? Like, so I'm not saying it's probable. I'm not, but my mind just can go there. I can entertain those thoughts because of all of this crazy crap that I already thought could be possible.
I completely agree with you on that. And I think you're right. It does. We end up kind of thinking differently. It's like, well, if I once believed this is not too far fetched. And if nothing, I think we're more open to it and not threatened by these ideas. There's some that I flat out like, no, I don't believe that. But I'm with you. I am just fascinated by it. I want to know, how do you get there? Like, what's your thought process behind it? Why do you think that? Because there've been so many things that were once labeled as conspiracy theories and now are not,
That's the part that I always get hung up on. Right when I'm about to fully, it's like I don't ever fully believe them, but I don't ever fully dismiss them. So maybe that's a problem. I don't know. But yeah, it gets tricky. Some of them like have been proven to be true. And they were as simple as a government cover-up. Probably then we end up right back where we started with the CIA. Who do you trust? Who do you believe?
Exactly. And maybe kind of that's the point, is it does seem to be cyclic.
Yep.
These conspiracy theories throughout history,
Yep.
right? And the number of them that were like, okay, that actually did turn out to be true. Our government was lying about that. So it becomes so much easier to believe the other thing. Then add to it people with our background where we're like, well, I once believed that, so why would this be so far-fetched? There's a lot of people were putting up a lot of their conspiracy theories, their favorites. I'm going to read you some of these, but Seal Bill says Liz Gale as reincarnation of Queen Elizabeth is true for me.
Love it.
Just LaBarber says gatekeeping on the super duper secret info, the hallmark of all culty behavior. You aren't brainwashed enough to know our really our really cray stuff.
Right. And that's so true. I mean, that's a psychological trick too. It's like a little bit of supply and demand, secret information, hard to get to. There's a draw there. I love it when somebody tells me they heard a new conspiracy theory. I'm like, give it to me. What is it? Doesn't mean I believe it, but it's like a tickle in the brain. I love it.
No, I agree. So Spicy Cat Foster said, favorite conspiracy theory, whether you believe it or not, Bigfoot.
You want to talk about Bigfoot?
Yes.
Let's talk about Bigfoot. My husband is obsessed with Bigfoot. I mean that in the kindest, gentlest way. For one, he falls asleep listening to podcasts because he has a little bit of tinnitus and it helps him. He has probably listened to 20,000, that's an exaggeration, but he's for sure an expert in firsthand account of Bigfoot. Have you heard the one that Bigfoot is actually an interdimensional being? And that's why we don't actually find evidence of Bigfoot. Like we'd find Bigfoot bones and whatnot. Have you heard that one? Don't know.
No, but I mean, it would make sense. I only recently because I never understood the difference between the third dimension and the fourth dimension.
Okay.
And what I don't know if I still have it right. So a multi-dimensional being is one that can move between these dimensions. And we live in the third dimension, so we can move in space, but we cannot move in time. But the fourth dimension, you can move in space and time.
Ooh, that sounds right. I'm no expert. I just know that if you go in the fourth and you were here, poof, you're gone.
Yeah, but it makes sense that I could see how if Bigfoot was an interdimensional being, they could move through time and space.
Like the Jinn, or there's a few other creatures throughout history, or like Dogman, who have had the same sort of idea. Like they're supernatural. You're not looking for like an ape Darwin. What is the word? What evolved? That's why it's so elusive. Also, if I have one takeaway to send you guys with, not that we're leaving, but just on this Bigfoot conversation, is that you smell them before you see them.
Oh, really? Is that what they all say?
Keep that in mind. Yes.
What does Bigfoot smell like?
I mean, come on, Natalie, it's indescribable. No, I have no idea. That doesn't come through on a podcast. But
smells like feet.
Yeah, I think honestly,
dirty ass.
most likely, most of those people, I think honestly, probably were around a bear and they thought it was Bigfoot. That's my skeptic, because if you've ever wandered into a bear's space, you can smell them. Like, not just next to a bear, but like if you go into their space. We had some old, there used to be a homestead on my old property with some old grapes and apple trees, and we would go there every once in a while. And when you went back there, there was a bear lived there. You could smell it. Wow.
It's probably a little bit of
maybe
both.
It was Bigfoot though.
It could have been Bigfoot, but yeah, I'm down with hearing about the Bigfoot. Let's see. Amber Vanessa says, I remember an LRH story that my mom told me about golden giraffes being made on a planet. And I always wanted a golden giraffe because I thought it sounded pretty cool.
Okay, two things, Amber. One, thank you, because you totally validated that for me. Two, I'm all about attainable goals, and I feel like you should, and we just get you a little figurine. We'll spray paint that sucker gold. Do it.
This is doable.
Do it. Get you that gold giraffe. Get it.
We can make that happen.
Yeah.
Adam Carmona says the CIA compulsively classified documents. They collected a bunch of New Age material, classified it, and the classification is presented as evidence of truth.
Okay, yes, Adam. All right. I didn't talk about that today because, like, it's a whole other layer, but we do have to acknowledge that there's always another layer, right? So there is an idea with certain theories or pieces of information in theories that they are misinformation put into a real theory to mess it up, right? Does that make sense? So it's like to debunk it from the inside out. Okay. There's ideas that like Neil deGrasse, yeah, that he and Bill Nye, there are theories out there. I'm not sure I subscribe to them, but there are theories that they are out there. Their sole purpose is to dysregulate the science understanding. I'm just saying, so that goes, there are other layers where it's like, it's a conspiracy. It's like, no, that's a conspiracy theory that the CIA made up to make you think it's a conspiracy theory so that you don't really look at the truth, which is another conspiracy theory that the CIA made up. And then they turned around and they classified. You're like, whoa, buddy. And that's how you end up sounding if you don't check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Exactly. Candace is talking about the secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. I've never seen it. Tony watched it. And I guess there's a few shows and he would tell me like, yeah, you got to watch this, but it sounded so scary to me. And I can't watch scary things at night. And I don't always have time during the day, but to me, this is a daytime show. She says, I've watched the show Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. They cover interdimensional travel, skinwalkers and aliens. Quite interesting and funny.
I've seen that too. And I agree. It's creepy. Here's the thing. I'm a believer enough to know that I'm not setting foot on Skinwalker Ranch. So I don't know what that says about me, but I'm not going there. Does that make me a believer? I guess.
I like the term cautious.
Cautious.
Just because again, you never know.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I'm also like, I love fiction and the writer, this is, it's really fun, I think, to question some of these really basic things or things we've been told. Like, what's the harm in that? And if you have a belief that you feel yourself like literally like tensing up about because somebody dares question you, I would challenge you to find yourself a safe place or a safe person and challenge that, because truth holds up to challenge, right? That's where Scientology always failed. If it's true, it will work. It doesn't work, or it doesn't work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And so I that's why I love this and why I kind of almost advocate for conspiracy theories in a way. For one, anybody out there who's believing everything that they're being told, you're an idiot. Sorry. Yeah. Like between governments, between capitalism, between weird personalities, you can't take everything at face value.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's very true.
Grow up there. Start asking.
Yeah. And let's talk about it. I think it's fascinating. And these are more conversations that we never would have been allowed to have in Scientology.
Right.
And I love your take on it. And I can't believe I did not know this about you. So I'm super excited. Because I'm like, we got to talk about this more because there is so much. And keep your questions, your comments coming, especially on the replay, because I think we should talk about this more and see which maybe conspiracy theories we want to take a look at and maybe do a deeper dive on. Luna says, do you see some conspiracy theories being a basis in Hubbard's writings? I can see him covering all sides, knowing that those theorems, I don't know what that word is, or is it like theories?
Yeah, I think that's the plural.
Oh, okay.
But
knowing if these if these theories
yeah.
are true.
Yeah. I mean, I think that L. Ron Hubbard probably did have some knowledge, some secret teachings from, the occult and maybe the Navy, who knows, people in his life. But I think it was later, somewhere along the line, I think he really understood the power of conspiracy theories in like other truths.
Yeah. And of creating a mystery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, absolutely. Here is Liz's book. You can find on Amazon right there. Go make sure you find it. And now we know also that you've got a couple YouTube channels.
I
And let
do.
me pull up the Scientology one that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
This is Liz Gale Exposes Scientology. You can find
Mhm.
her on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, you are missing out. I so appreciate you sitting down and doing this with me. And I know
So
we will
fun.
do it again. Yeah, people are saying sequel, sequel. We'll totally do it again. So keep your comments coming and we'll have this conversation again and talk about it some more.
Love it. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, chat. This was super fun. I never get to talk about this stuff. Thank you,
I
Natalie.
know. That's why I'm so excited that they found this out about you. I'm like, oh my God, somebody I can talk to about these conspiracy
That's
theories.
right. That's
So
right.
thank you, Liz. Everybody get out. Have that cult-free day.
Yes. Bye.